This is the budget hearing for financial operations. I'm Councilor Green, and I'm joined by Councilors Hogan, Fiscal, Bay, and Iagua. All right, so I'll turn it over, and you guys can start your presentation.
Thanks, Councilor Green. So, as I mentioned during last meeting, this year, fiscal year 22, is a continuation of the reorganization and centralization of the finance department. The largest change that you're going to see is in this Bureau of Financial Operations. This is a group that was formed about 4 years ago when we started to centralize the accounts payable process. We're now moving into the next phase of this change, and in fact, the department will be completely unrecognizable as we're taking the purchasing and accounts payable function, which really we had that split into two groups. Accounts payable lived within Bureau of Accounts. Requisition vouchers lived within financial operations. We're now bringing those two back together. It's important to have separation of duties. We can have those separation of duties by individual while still having the same flow through beginning to end guidance coming from the same location. So all of the vouchering requisitions is moving from the Bureau of Financial Operations into the Bureau of Accounts. When we compare it to last year, that leaves the Bureau of Financial Operations empty. The intent of this group was and continues to be a central coordinator of all things finance across all of the departments. It's the common guide, the common voice that brings all of the departments together under one finance department. What we did, some of the major changes we're making this year is we're bringing some of the finance functions from operating departments into the Bureau of Financial Operations. Primarily, that's Police Department, DPW, and Parks. Those are three of the largest groups, and it was a good opportunity for us to start to get a little more control over what they're doing, direct what they're doing a little bit more. As I mentioned in the last meeting, we want to be careful that we don't break the system. It's a massive operation. These are massive changes. We want to be deliberate. We want to make sure we are always moving in the right direction, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because if we're not careful, the whole thing falls apart. So what we are doing in fiscal 21, the next step here, is centralizing the payroll function. Payroll has had its issues. A lot of that can be blamed on a 40-year-old system. We're in the process of improving that. That's not the only issue. We have individuals within each department who haven't gotten the guidance they've needed. Each of them are operating differently. We're bringing those payroll individuals back into the Bureau of Financial Operations. They're going to work closely with the central payroll team, which has always been in the Bureau of Accounts. Now they're moving over to the Bureau of Financial Operations. So we're going to have a larger payroll team, all of the same individuals, but they're now going to be working together. We're already doing a deep dive into how they operate. Again, we have some redundancies in what we're doing. We have inefficiencies. We have inconsistencies. Those are the kinds of things that a new payroll system isn't necessarily going to fix, or a poorly implemented payroll system isn't going to fix. So working to overhaul that entire payroll process with the same people, now housed under one roof, with some guidance from our new Deputy Commissioner of Finance. And if you haven't had a chance to meet him, Matt Delaney is on the call now. I'd encourage you to reach out if you've got any questions about financial operations or the payroll process. He's been here about a month and a half, and I think he's been living in department payroll, trying to get that up to speed. So largest move is in payroll. We've also got some general financial operations, and these are the things like department financial reporting that has lived within the department, some grant reporting, special finance needs that each of the departments have. This is another role that we're bringing into the finance department to provide some more guidance and direction. Ultimately, the finance department or the Bureau of Financial Operations is going to act as a customer service center for all of the finance departments. As we start to take some of these people away from the departments, they're left with a gap, or there's legitimate concern that they will be left with a gap. Our role as the Bureau of Financial Operations is to make sure they're happy. If we pull someone from the department into central finance and the department isn't happy with it, the department isn't getting what they need, then this has failed. One of the keys to measuring the success is the satisfaction of the department heads. We want to be able to execute all of these changes and have the department say, wow, thank you. You've taken a lot off my plate. I can focus on fixing roads. I can focus on policing. I can focus on all the things I'm good at. And I don't feel like I've missed anything because you've taken these people over. So that I think is one of the key measurements of success. Another piece that we're centralizing is grants and capital projects. So capital projects are largely the work of the engineering department, DPW. We've got some work in all of the departments, parks, water, sewer, and so the capital projects, the finance side of capital projects have been administered outside of the finance department, and it's been passed around from research department to engineering to DPW. They haven't really had a home, and they haven't had the guidance, the financial guidance that they've needed to be successful. They're very familiar with the operations, very familiar with the programs and the types of grants, but have been missing that eye from the financial experts. So we're bringing that into central finance, and we're also adding to that. I'm sure each of you have been familiar with the audit reports we've received in the past that indicate that we have had issues with our grant reporting and grant accounting. As recent as last year, we missed a couple of deadlines on some of our reporting. Every year, their suggestion was create a central oversight of the grant process. So that's what we're doing. We've added a new position. This is going to be a financial grants administrator. This individual is going to be responsible for all of the grant accounting reporting, going to report directly into Deputy Commissioner Delaney, and we're going to take responsibility for all of this. We don't want to get to the end of the year and say we missed something in grants because we didn't know it was happening. Like I said in the last meeting, I am responsible for everything that happens financially. And so I'm going to dig into every piece of the finances, every activity, every type of transaction. And I am personally going to be comfortable that if something goes wrong at the end of the year, I can't say I didn't know about it. That's not to say we're going to get everything right on the first try, but certainly I'm going to be in a position where I can take responsibility for it. that's really where we are now within the Bureau of Financial Operations. It's going to be payroll, grants and capital, and all other financial support. So what started with 5 positions in 2021, all of those, well, 2 of them moved into the BOA, 2 of them are departures that we didn't fill. And then we've got, to get to the 11 that we have budgeted in 22, one's moving in from research. We have 3, we have the deputy commissioner moving in from BOA, 2 payroll clerks moving in from BOA. We have 2 payroll clerks moving in from police. We have 3 people moving in from DPW, and that's payroll and general finance. 1 moving in from parks. And then we've got 3 people in accounts payable positions moving into BOA. A lot of movement. Again, it's just to try to get everyone under one roof and start talking the same language, start moving everyone in a common direction. Any questions on that before I move to the specifics of the budget?
You can go ahead, Brad.
Okay, so so this is largely, it's a service department. So heavy on personnel expenses, light on everything else. It's going to be a nimble group that we can deploy to the departments when they need them, but provide the central oversight. So for the 11 individuals, we have salaries budgeted for 22 of $579,316. So significant increase over 21. As I mentioned, a lot of that is salaries moving in from other departments. Really only 1 net add there. You'll also see professional services. We've got 2 SURA employees that are payroll clerks working in the Bureau of Financial Operations. Other expenses, just small office supplies, training. We're focusing, within all of the departments in finance, we're focusing on training and personnel management. These are massive changes. These are a lot of people that have been, forgotten in the past and have been left on their own to try to figure out what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. One of the benefits we're hoping to get out of centralization is that we're going to have a group of capable supervisors that are providing the right direction, providing the right training. And so we've increased the training budget on each of the bureaus considerably. Any questions there? Matt, anything I missed?
No, I'd say I just want to emphasize that while the specific departments will kind of be divesting or having an employee shift more to the financial locations here, it's been stated clearly from the time I interviewed until the time I've started to make my introductions within the departments that my primary goal is to be their contact, to be their liaison for anything finance. And I think that's been well received by the department heads that I've spoken with, whereby they now have a name, a phone number, contact info, and hopefully soon we can all get together and meet in person with a coffee. But I think they were comforted by the idea that we were reaching out, being available to answer any of the finance related questions they may have. But ultimately, our goal is to get to a point where we can really proactively support them as far as like, here's your actuals compared to budgets, and to where we can start to see, results, and they can have comfort on where they stand at any point in the year or any month. So I think the objective is clear, and I appreciate the opportunity to help and to support and to bridge those gaps.
Could I ask a question, Councilor Green? Brad, we talked about this yesterday a little bit. Are all the departments, as far as like say payroll, like overtime, are they all aligned in the same way? I mean, I know the police for years did, little paper slips instead of like being electronically aligned. Where are they now? I mean, I think my main concern is how if somebody feels that they, in our workforce, this is one of my concerns. In my work, in our workforce that figures they owe me 2 more hours of overtime. Who do I call?
Mhm.
Matt or you
Yeah.
or what?
Yeah, those are all things we're working on. The answer to your first question is they're all doing it different. We're doing a deep dive into these departments. But first step is to understand how everyone is currently operating and design the best practices. So we are not far enough into that to really start making significant changes. It's got to be done before we implement this new payroll software, but we are still trying to understand that. We will, we want to be conscious of each of the department's needs, each of the employees' needs. So we don't want to say tomorrow, yesterday you were filling out a sheet of paper for your time sheet. Tomorrow you're doing it completely different. The hope is we can make some small changes. If there is something that the department says, we're unique, we need to do it this way, and they have some valid concerns, certainly we're gonna be conscious of that, and we're gonna be careful with the changes that we make. That being said, if it doesn't make sense to stay on paper timesheets in the future, we're not going to stay on paper timesheets in the future. It's going to be hard for some people, but and we'll provide whatever support is necessary to get the individuals where we need everyone to be. But there may be some changes that some individuals are uncomfortable with. As far as
Brad, that was very diplomatic, because I feel that some of our departments out there traditionally have felt they're unique and they can do it their way. So, I commend you on trying to bring everybody in alignment, but this is probably going to, and some of those decisions are going to be made maybe at a level a little higher. Traditionally, some of our bigger departments have abused the overtime system, throwing in overtime slips after, on a catch-as-catch-can basis. And I just think this gives us an opportunity. I wish you all the luck in the world on this. And certainly I'm sure my colleagues would support you on this too. If we could bring everybody into an alignment and still be able to answer those questions of our employees, it'd be greght. So. Yeah, and one other thing we touched briefly on our conversation yesterday about who's checking on the pilot agreements again. You told me, but I'm sorry, I didn't retain it.
Currently, that is living in the Bureau of Accounts. Director of Accounting is overseeing that. That's not a sustainable long-term solution. We have in the budget a central accounts receivable and collections position that we've got it budgeted to start January 1st of 2022. That individual would take over pilots, and that would be the one person that understands all of the pilots and has a process to make sure we're billing properly collecting any outstanding pilots. But you know, rather than it being a nights and weekends job for the director of accounting, that will go to someone who is specializing in billing and collections and familiar with all of the bills.
And there's probably one other question. I'm not sure it's to you. Maybe I don't. I wonder if maybe Frank could answer this. As far as the grants, which putting the grants under one entity is a terrific idea. But I'm wondering, who is there a clearing mechanism as far as certain departments, as far as going for grants? I have a feeling sometimes they just go for grants because they're out there. And I think there's got to be sort of a central mission, meaning, is this going to really help us, or is this going to hurt us? Because we have to because of the criteria involved in getting the grants.
Yeah,
So
it's a great point, Councilor Hogan. And
I love when you start off like that, Frank. It's a great point, Councilor Hogan. I really like that.
I actually say that in my sleep now, Councilor Hogan. We need to, there's no question right now, we're very focused on the financial side of grants and being able to ensure that the grants that we have are being managed appropriately, and we're, as Brad just said, we're hitting the right deadlines, and we're not putting the city in any jeopardy. But ultimately, next year's budget, probably, we really need to beef up the research department, and in terms of grant development and what you just laid out, being much more strategic about it. And we don't have the resources to do that now. We leave it to the departments, and to some extent it's department discretion, unless, you know, Janet raises her hand and just says, I have absolutely no capacity to help you with this. But we need to be more thoughtful about it. But we also, I think we go for things that we maybe shouldn't, but I think we also leave money on the table sometimes. So we need to be much more strategic in that department.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks, Councilor Green.
Councilor Green, I just have a quick question about grants, or observation, basically. I've been here a long time. Matter of fact, I came out of the grants office before I was city clerk. Unless you make the department heads go through whatever the department is, whether it's under finance or where it consistently has been under grants research, the problem is the department heads like to make their own application, and they don't always run them through one clearinghouse. And that's how we've missed the filing dates, is because there's not one place in which the grants have been worked through. And there used to be, when I was up there, somebody from the police did all the police department grants, somebody from fire did the grants. They were all there in the grants office, but worked with the department heads and their staff to get the grants, you know, applied for and fulfilled correctly. It's been diffused over the years. So if you create a new division, unless you force the department heads to go through that division, you're not going to have any better situation than you have right now.
Thanks. Other questions on this?
Councilor Hogan, can I just revisit the overtime and then the new time and attendance and software system just for 1 second? I feel compelled to clarify one thing. I don't want anyone to assume that every single department is going to have the same standards for overtime. They're going to be on a single system, but part of the complexity of building it is that there are contractual rules around the way overtime is bid and earned and accumulated. The system needs to be built to accommodate all those anomalies. The advantage of the system is that we'll be able to see it, report on it, and make sure that it's not being in any way abused, that the rules are built into the system, but every department will still, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your point of view, have their own overtime earning anomalies based on their contracts.
And I imagine, Frank, that this new system will be able to reveal areas where overtime might be abused.
Absolutely. Without question, that's one of the major advantages to the system, is that it provides that window. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can add on to that, you know, I'm not familiar with any specific instances of abuse, but filing an overtime sheet when overtime wasn't worked is fraud. And the finance department's responsibility is to detect or prevent fraud. We take that role very seriously, and so we will ensure that we, within the central finance department and overseeing the payroll function, have the controls in place to prevent or detect fraud or the potential of fraud.
Anything else on this, Commissioner?
Not for me.
Any
Thank you.
questions from the other councilors? Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your presentation, and we'll close this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.